what the heck? We're actually doing this crazy thing. Okay, we're in it now.
And then once you're like dead, the way you leave the world, instead of going into your like dizzy dance and then falling out of the world, it's just we freeze this frame, the drawing buffer, and then we cut in a 2D thing and it flies out, comes out.
So you're saying every time you fall?
If you're ever killed by sensors, it's just the effect of how we get you out of the world. It's not like a special guy who tries to
annoying. It happens a lot, though.
I think that he's never wanted to be pegged as just an adventure game guy. That's it, you know.
I do just graphic adventures, which are they're not action-oriented, even though the plot and the story can be action-oriented.
So it's problem-solving kind of stuff?
Yeah, exploratory and puzzle solving. Once you've made a certain kind of game, like you've made an RPG, people are like, "Oh, these guys, they got the DNA to make RPGs," and it's like, no, people didn't know how, and then they tried it, and they figured it out, and they made it. There's not this DNA that's like, this is a shooter company, and this is a... People just stay with, what they know, but it's, all those people at some point had to do it for the first time.
So this being like his chance to kind of prove it, like he was taking it very seriously. Like he was playing a lot of platformers.
Oh, I played a lot of Rayman 2 and we were making Psychonauts that had a big influence on it. I think in the art, I really loved the way the textures were painted. It's funny, it's been years and years since I played it, but there's certain platforms, I remember the way they felt. Oh, come on. That is cheap. Oh, push it. Ah! Okay, I am the king of all Lord, time, and dimension. Whoa, oh, there's a robot! Oh, I better not start off with a... God damn it! Do you think this art style will ever become retro? Will hipsters ever do late 90s chunky polygons? No lighting. And all those games made me feel like I want to explore a 3D space in a really free and open way, and not in a, set, going through these sets, and not going through these static rooms anymore. I want to go, and I want to have an ease of character motion and just run through doors and not click on anything and just go.
Now it's like, there's so much knowledge that's like totally available, but in 2003, like no way. Like it was a bunch of people just trying to like play the games and figure it out, and it's really tough, And if you haven't done it before and taken it all the way to the end, like you're not going to have that kind of knowledge. And so just nobody really had that. There were a lot of like green people that were right out of school.
Could you say your name, please?
I'm Raymond Crook.
Very well. And what is your position in this company?
Company grunt.
I remember he's like, well, how much do you want to get paid? And I'm like, I don't know. So I like threw out two numbers, like a higher and a lower number, and he picks the lower number. I'm like, okay. No, he did actually. I will say we were, I wasn't very long in the project, like a month or a couple weeks, and we were working super late already. And I remember him pulling me aside and saying, hey, I'll give you that little bit higher salary. There was hardly anything there. They were just starting to build the engine. When I came on, I just assumed that these guys were all like hardcore veterans that knew exactly what they were doing. But I quickly realized that really nobody knew what they were doing.
Show me your bat. Make it do something. See the bat?
Wow!
I mean, they had made games, but very, very different kinds of games. And this is suddenly this new technology. We're making a platformer, and no one knew what they were doing. So I kind of fit right in, because I didn't know what I was doing either. So none of us did.
You're trying to act like you know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing, and you're quickly trying to figure out what to do. And so the other thing was we wrote an engine from scratch. And writing an engine from scratch, you just don't have the features you need to build the world. So we didn't have any level design tools. We didn't have any of that stuff. So that took a long time. And then once we had our first playable version of the game, we realized, we don't want to be like anything like this. This is playing terrible. Like we had a different version of the main character.
Wow, this is not the leader of this cast of characters, This guy with a stocking cap, he's so odd looking compared to all the other odd characters. So that's why we had to redesign him.
So he ended up throwing that version out completely almost and starting over again. So a lot of it was the throwing stuff out and starting over again learning process. Jeff Solis. What are you working on?
Much like the studio itself, there was a lot of scrappy decisions that were made, and you excelled by just sort of getting in there and doing it. You know, they're still trying to figure out the jump distances, and so I'm just like, well, let's give this a try, and we'll go from there. At that time, I was spending a lot of time in the office, and I was just cranking out work like crazy. But you know, that's what you do when you first get a job in the games industry, is especially when you love it. That's just, you work.
Everyone say hi. 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 I love crunch mode. Say it. Say it.
I remember lots of late nights, but I just thought that's just how it always was. You know, I remember Tim programming. I was like, oh, Tim's a programmer, you know, because that was his background, but he hadn't really done a lot of it in a while, I don't think. So I remember him like up, trying to program, I think getting infections in his eyes from his contacts, and sleeping on stairs.
My best, most comfortable nights are sleeping on the floor sometimes. I'm going to All-Star Donuts.
Wow. Late night? I'm just waking up.
Is definitely an up and down ride. You know, a lot of late nights in the very beginning, just to kind of, I mean, everyone wearing a million hats to kind of, you know, spending the night to try to just get the theater level done, to prove like what we can do and prove what the thing was like, you know. So.
Key, work harder. Oh. Key, work harder.
Like, I was thinking about how we were working then, because, I mean, there's a certain amount of naivety. Like, I think if I approach Psychonauts now, like, the amount of custom and reuse that we didn't do would be the stuff that I would be, like, really scared about now. But back then, it was like, yeah, let's do it that way. There was a lot more kind of, naive optimism, maybe? I don't know what the right word is, but, you know, whenever some, like, crazy new thing came up, we just did it instead of pushing back and thinking like, oh wait, I don't know if that's such a good idea.
That's our schedule. Don't look at that.
We didn't know exactly what we were doing in some regard. It was okay because that was part of the fun of the culture, and like even just working on your first game ever.
There was a lot of camaraderie, you know, there was a very family atmosphere. And it was also sort of like a in the trenches atmosphere. Like, it was such a tough project that we, you know, everybody sort of really bonded together.
Oh, baby, light bright.
Yeah! Santa unshaven and drinking nog.
Baby clothes.
Oh.
I'm gonna go and put them on now.
Put them on! Oh my god! Best present ever!
But there's a lot of good memories. It was fun. I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was difficult, but it was actually a lot of fun.
Okay, here's Homie crossing the street. Homie crossing the street. He's going to the wrestling match. Something might happen.
Why did life treat me this way? Tell my mom I love her. Oh god, it hurts so. It hurts so bad.
I remember during the crunches, you know, we'd get food in, we'd sit in this room, we'd all be eating our Indian food, we'd watch Arrested Development on the TV, and those are some of the happiest memories I have of working on Psychonauts, but it was during the worst time of working on Psychonauts.
I think you broke it.
You crashed it, man. When did you... For a long time, the game just didn't feel right, and it was really bugging us. We were building environments, but the character didn't feel right, and so we finally started the RAS action status meetings. So like, what about sliding up the ladder, sliding down the ladder, getting off the ladder, jumping onto a tightrope, and like we just go over those every single time we met, which was, for a while, that was like every other day. And we just do it over and over and over again until he was snappy and felt really good. I'm new dart and I run and I lean.
Oh, he's got the little side run.
Isn't it cool how he leans?
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome.
So once we learned what we were doing, starting around 2003, we really knew what we were doing.
So Microsoft must be particularly pleased with getting the nod for Best Original Game for its Xbox. Psychonauts won in that category. We're seeing it here. It's a unique game about Raz, a kid who goes to psychic summer camp to shape his psychic abilities. He then gets to control people's minds, almost like a combination of Stephen King's Firestarter and something from the X-Men. That should hit shelves next spring.
But the impression that I had was it was pretty close to shipping, which it definitely was not.
We had really started to figure out how to make the game. We were moving along at a good rate at that point, but it took us a long time to get there. I remember when we got a call, we heard that there had been a change with the management.
Kind of came as a surprise to a lot of gamers, certainly, and to most of the industry when it was announced that you'd be leaving. I mean, what was the kind of thinking behind your decision to leave?
When I started in the game business, it was because nobody cared about it, and I could do it my way. And I'd either succeed or fail, but I knew it was my decisions, and that's where it was going to go. Now, it's so important to the company that there's a lot of people who have opinions about how things should be done. And honestly, that was a difficult environment for me to work in.
Ed Freeze just quit, but everything's going to stay the same. Nothing's going to change, but he just quit. I was like, I wonder if that's going to change anything.
After we'd heard everything's fine, I think it was the next day that everything wasn't fine, and we found out that we were canceled.
Well, for some reason they got nervous and they dropped it, and I feared that they dropped it in favor of the really middling title Voodoo Vince, which was a very pretty game, but not. This is, I think, going to be a winner.
Now, whose call would that have been?
I'm not 100%, but whoever it is, they should be ashamed.
All right, fair enough.
I guess there's like that's a very common thing when like the new guy comes in, he wants to cut any non-sure bets. Like it's good to just like chop those out because you'll take the blame for them if they don't pan out. So it got cut, but I remember there was some of the focus group stuff that they were doing. They somehow came up with this number that it was like 72% weird or something like this. Based on all this feedback they got from people, the weird score was like much too high for them to like keep it around,
Here's the marketing document that Microsoft made for Psychonauts. Based on the 12 focus groups conducted worldwide, the primary weakness of the game are the storyline, which is considered unoriginal, childish, and overly complex. Tongue-in-cheek nature of the game is a weakness. Most simply did not get the joke. Others disliked the satirical humor. In addition, many feel the humor would get old, limiting replayability. Humor should be incorporated into the game as a secondary or supporting characteristic. Humor should be simplified and made immediately apparent. To help international appeal, limit game components that feel especially Americanized, i.e. summer camp.